seeing I was nice and didn't come to the tech rehearsal. That dang guy. There we go. I think that's a good volume. I can hear myself speaking.
There's people hard to hear.
Fair enough. I'll make sure I speak loud and clear. Although I will speak fast. I can't help it. Are we ready to get started? Or do we need a second, Tim, for you to set anything up? Good to go. Good evening, everybody. And, well, it's nice to get a response, actually. Welcome to the Angels United Church event tonight. We are having the Gore Highlands Climate Action in Gore Highlands speaker series. Today we are joined by Victoria Serda. So first off, I'd like to acknowledge that we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, Six Nations of the Grand River, Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, Wyandotte, Wyandotte peoples, on whose traditional territories we gather and whose ancestors signed treaties with our ancestors. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. I also would like to just state, and remind you for those who are in attendance in person, that we do have emergency exits behind you, and that there's no smoking permitted within the church. If you do need to smoke, you can practice your habit outside at the end of the sidewalk of the south entrance. Washrooms do exist through the lobby into the front entrance, and they are wheelchair accessible if needed. The Climate Action in Gore Highlands Speaker Series is proud to present, as I said, Victoria Serda. 2021 through 2030 is the UN Decade on Ecosystems Restoration. It is a rallying call for the protection and revival of ecosystems all around the world for the benefit of people and nature. It aims to halt the degradation of ecosystems and restore them to achieve active global goals. Only with healthy ecosystems can we achieve people's livelihoods, counteract climate change, and stop the collapse of biodiversity. This speaker series aims to inform the community of issues related to climate change and the biodiversity of our environment. It will also explore our relationship with Indigenous peoples and a shared vision of sustainability moving forward. Victoria Serda has been trained by Al Gore for the Climate Reality Project. She is one of the first 20 Canadian climate leaders to do so. She has been an organic farmer, administrator, market gardener, grant writer, and teacher. In the past, she's been a municipal councillor for Saugeen Shores and was the deputy leader of the Green Party of Ontario, provincial campaign chair and co-chair of the National Convention, and her environmental not-for-profit SauGreen has created over $1.5 million worth of program value since 2010. She now owns and operates Step 4, a consulting firm specializing in Indigenous diplomacy and engagement. She is also on the boards of both the Climate Reality Project of Canada and the Bagadawad Alliance, and an Anishinaabe-led and managed environmental not-for-profit corporation based in the Neheshaming. Among her goals, she lists shifting society into sustainable communities, raising awareness about climate change, and supporting Indigenous communities and groups to building capacity and action. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce Victoria Serda tonight. Thank you so very much for coming. The podium is yours.
Ani Bajo, welcome. Victoria Serda Indigenous, Sauking Anishinaabe King Ndunjaba. I'm a settler ally. I live in Wyerton, where Wyerton Willie recently predicted that we were going to have an early spring, and I think it's happening. He's not always the best predictor of where things are going, but I think it's a fun place to be, especially because I live in the middle of Saugeen and Neheshaming, so I'm lucky to work with a lot of people that I share a lot of values with, and a belief around that the world is for all of us to share. that we all have relations with each other, and we also have relations with everything around us. And so in the spirit of this wonderful speaker series that I was delighted to be contacted about, although I feel a little bit like a wannabe, because originally they wanted Grant Linney, who's a colleague of mine in the Climate Reality Project. Grant is a retired outdoor education center teacher, and when in his retirement, he decided he was going to give climate change presentations all the time. So I think he is up to about 600 climate change presentations that he's given now. And I reached about 180 before I started kind of pushing it to help other people to have voices and be able to talk. But Grant just keeps going. But he's down near St. Catharines, so it got massaged up my way since I'm a little bit more local. So that's a bit of the story of why I'm particularly here. But I'm also really grateful that I have a whole crew with me tonight from the Bogatawa Alliance. And my friend and colleague Natasha Akawenzi is here, along with two of her sons, Christopher and Mingan Akawenzi, and we have Owen Mononami and Ethan Young and Talon Brissett here. And a few of them are going to speak for you as well, so they get to share the presentation with me and with all of you. So I'm really delighted that we have so many, a good crew here to be able to share different perspectives with you tonight. To give a little bit of my story, if I can remember how to make this work. There it goes. I did want to tell you a little bit about the Bogatawa Alliance, and Natasha and the others are going to talk a bit more about it, but this is me in a big canoe out, and this was this on the way back from Rabbit Island? I think, yeah. Anyway, we adventure. And it's funny, I don't know how many of you, when you got a little bit older, you started getting more active. That's been my experience. And so we do a lot of hiking, a lot of canoeing, and getting out and about. Since I grew up in Owen Sound, I used to live right at the back end of Harrison Park. So I spent a lot of time walking all the way up to Ingalls Falls and back. Longer treks were just kind of normal for me as a kid. But then as an adult, you get busy and you kind of don't do it as much. And then the last few years, we've been hiking all over the place. And I get to learn a lot from this crew about the land and the plants and the birds and getting to identify different things. And we just have a pretty good time with what we're doing while we're learning and growing together. And if you ever get a chance to come up on the peninsula, we have a crew that are all being trained as guides to be able to take people out on hikes or out in the canoes. So if you know of anybody that just wants to get out on the land and learn some more, you'll get to hear a little bit of their knowledge tonight, but when you come on a hike, it's really fun, especially with young kids and stuff. So I have a little bit here about my family. I mean, the other stuff doesn't really matter, right? So my grandson is all what's important. So in here, you'll probably see a couple photos of him at least. He comes out for the hikes on occasion with us. One night he came out in the Alvar at night and was very delighted and excited. So anyway, he's 5, and he's also a band member of the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. And so, although I used to work for the Saugeen First Nations band, I've got an even closer connection now at Nishinabing. But we have a lot of fun in what we do. I'm on the board of a number of different things, as well as the Niagara Escarpment Biosphere Network was the only thing that I think that we didn't mention before. And we just submitted the self-study to the United Nations so that the Niagara Escarpment hopefully will keep the designation. So I think we don't cheer. It was 4 years for me of trying to shepherd that process through, and anybody that's ever been involved in politics and these long things, and Stuart and Dale and other people, it takes a long time sometimes to get these things to happen. But it's a little bit of the work I do, but my heart is really in raising Indigenous voices around climate change. Chief Randall Coggy of Saugeen First Nation years ago talked to me about all the work that I was doing about climate change, and he said, Victoria, you're awesome. You're a great speaker. you do wonderful things. You do all this tree planting, and you know, talk about sustainable buildings, and you know, you're trying to do all these things, but really the Indigenous people are the ones that have moral authority to talk about these things. It's not me as a settler. I don't have as strong of a case to be able to make, because my family has been in this area. Like my great-grandparents came to Chatsworth in the later part of the 1800s, and so my family has been in this area for that long. I have a lot of stories that I carry from my parents and my grandparents, but not nearly the stories that I hear when I'm at Saugeen or at Niashingaming. Because I've heard people talking about the land bridge from Manitoulin Island. I've heard about when the settlers came to Toronto that they grew gardens all the way from the Danforth down to the water. Things that you wouldn't hear otherwise, that you wouldn't understand, that they have that long history from generations and generations of how to look after the world and how to be able to caretake all the people that are here, and that we have respect for what we're doing. So I shifted over a lot of my work, instead of me being the leader and the doer of things, that I support the direction of my friends to do the things that they think are important. And we're doing a lot of amazing work, so I'm really grateful that everybody's here tonight and that we're all sharing together. So I do have, let's see, am I going the right way? Oh, there's my grandson. And my husband, Jamie, and my daughter, Karina. She's also a climate reality leader. She was trained by Al Gore when she was 11. So she's been at this for a long time as well. And so this was just, I listed off the people so that if you're the type of person that likes to be able to read things, you can see people's names. And these are the speakers for tonight. So after me, it's going to be Natasha, then Chris and Owen and Ethan, then I'll come back to wrap it up. So the first part of this presentation tonight is we're mainly focusing on Grey and Bruce and Huron counties. I can talk about climate change for hours and hours and hours because it's a really complicated thing. And it's something that you want to talk about the things that matter to people about. So whenever I do a climate change presentation, I think of the area that I'm going to and the things that they care about. And I know down in the Markdale area that there's a lot of agriculture, there's a lot of concerned people, because you've got like a climate action committee here, and you have some really good politicians that both now and before have done a lot of work. I don't see Stuart right now, but he was, oh, you're behind. Okay, hi Stuart. I was elected at the same time as you were, and I remember seeing you at like AMO and Roma conferences, and like the work that people do can be a lifetime of work around these things. And we need to acknowledge all of that hard work that people have done in the past that brings us to the point where we can shift, and try to get it over into that point where we have a livable future for, my grandson and all of the people that are in our families. So talking about it from a local standpoint is really important, because that's where people feel it. That's where you see it and understand it. I remember years ago, Natasha and I brought Natasha down to one of my Climate Reality Project reunions in Toronto. And there's not a lot of diversity in the climate reality world. And we're working on it. I've been working on it for a long time. But there's not a lot of perspectives. There's a lot of privilege, because a lot of times the people that are able to go and get the training and take the time off work and be able to travel and stay in hotels, they're not people that are facing climate change directly in their own lives. They're usually people that kind of understand it more at a mental level. It's a different thing to them. And I remember one of the speakers was like, well, when climate change starts affecting us, that's when we're going to get really serious. And Natasha looked at me and just was like, "Argh." Like, what? What are we talking about? And like one of the reasons why, Natasha gave me a phone call about, almost 7 years ago, I think, 6.5 years ago or something, and heard that I was a climate change person. And we found out that her son Chris and my daughter Karina worked together at the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Environment Office. And so we had some, kids in common that were friends. And we started talking about climate change, and we kind of cooked up this idea that we could start a not-for-profit corporation. And, you know, in indigenous communities, normally they don't have their separate organizations besides the band councils and their bodies for being able to do things. So we started something rather unusual, and we're still rather unusual, but we do a lot of stuff with a lot of joy and laughter, and we take these trips around different places, and, you know, it's really nice. They're putting everybody up at the Riverstone Retreat. Elephant Thoughts has gotten everybody over there in Durham. We're set up in the Stone House for the night, so they don't have so far to drive home tonight. So you don't have to worry about them driving in the dark that whole couple hours up to Neshingaming. But we're here to just talk about what's happening locally. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do some of the kind of more boring stuff, like politician-like slides and whatever. Just to give kudos to my daughter, she did this for me, and she has a degree in communication, so she's good at it, but she's also been doing it for since probably 16 years, and she's only 27. So she's somebody who gets climate change communication quite well. So she wanted to show a couple things here, because one of the things that a lot of people don't know about climate change is the thing that will really impact is people's health. And it's the thing that we all, it's important to us that we all can live and breathe. But one of the big things that's going to happen is that we're going to have a lot more breathing problems as things get hotter and more humid. You know, like I'm starting to get to the age where I get achy when it's damp and cold and wet outside, like today, you know what I mean? But if you think of that collectively for more and more people, and you get really hot days, you know, so people, if they have emphysema or asthma, they're going to start having trouble. And it's also like climate change is going to make us have more pollen in the air, so people will have more allergies. Like there's a lot of things that will actually affect our quality of life and our health over time. I'm not going to talk about that a lot, but one of the things that they study is whether people understand how much it's going to affect their own health. And generally, people don't really care about it a lot, and they don't really understand it a lot. So it's something that it's kind of nice to know. These slides are all from the region as well, so don't think I'm not talking about American slides, or like this isn't about other places. This is all of my slides are from Grey and Bruce and Huron counties. So really people aren't paying attention, but they know that climate change is going to make things worse. They, you know, generally have an idea that that's a problem, but it still isn't as much as you would think, or that we need to do more to help people understand those things. There we go. I got it, Tim, I got it. So there is a lot of really good work being done. We were discussing this earlier, that there are really good targets in Grey County that are happening around reducing our emissions. But this is a map the Climate Risk Initiative did in order to show what's going on in our area and where things are at risk. And if you look in your part of the world, it's not looking the best for the risks of, like they're talking about like lakes and streams, and erosion, drought, flooding, and frost, and how much they're going to be affected over time. And I don't think that people in our area think this is happening. Like they don't know that this modeling has been done and that we need to start paying attention to these things, because it's going to be worse than people think and sooner than they think. So most people don't know, internationally, the big target they were trying to keep the world to was 1.5 degrees centigrade above what it was before. Here, I'm going to ask you a question. Does anybody know generally what the difference in temperature is between an ice age and a tropical period for overall temperature? Anybody know? Oh, when I saw you counting.
That was a guess. Natasha knows.
Yeah, it's 5. It's 5 degrees difference. So if you think of dinosaur time, when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth, and then you think of the time when Sudbury had 1 mile of ice above it, it's 5 degrees difference. We're already at 1.5 degrees. So that shift isn't, it's not something that is like, like, oh, we've got time to figure this out. It's not, because what'll happen is over time it triggers and it gets more and more and more, right? We hit these what they call tipping points, where things like greenhouse, Greenland's ice, starts shifting off, and it goes into the ocean, and that helps to raise the water levels. Yeah.
It's just, sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
I don't know if I could ask
Yeah.
a question or not.
Yeah.
Like on the map there, this, the red is always the worst,
Mm-hmm.
right? So is that temperature, or is that what the red is?
Oh, no, so the red is that there's more risk to
More
the
risk,
area.
okay.
Yes, so there's a
I'm
more,
wondering
yeah. What the scale was, yes, I understand. So they were trying to figure out what places that you had to be careful in the future and manage those risks more. So the area you live in is actually riskier than like up at Tomori for the effects of climate change on the area. And that often is because of so much infrastructure, right? Like anybody involved in municipal politics knows how much it costs to like build and put roads in and resurface roads, or when, if the, like I used to be on municipal council in Saugeen Shores, and like that pathway that they put along the water when the water level was high, like it took out this whole pathway, and it's like millions and millions of dollars in order to fix. People don't necessarily plan for those things properly when they're planning out with climate change. So, yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking. So I'm going to try to go through these quick because I know some people are tired, and graphs aren't always the most fun way to explain things, but they kind of give you a different way of looking at things. So this is a graphic from the Climate Atlas, and this information you can find online. Like my daughter was just researching it and found these things, and we are going to be getting a lot more days where it's going to be a lot warmer. Like people don't think about that, but if it's, if we have 16 days where it's up over 30 degrees, like 30 degrees is hot. Like if I think of my parents that are in their 80s, when it gets like this, like they don't have air conditioning in their house. It's going to be kind of like either we get air conditioning or you're going to need to come over to my house so you can cool down, kind of thing, right? And we're gonna need to start understanding that these things happen. Now, are any of you farmers? Have you ever, yeah, or gardeners? We've got gardeners in the room, yeah. Can you imagine if you had a couple of weeks of 30-degree weather? What goes on in your garden? What if you're growing peas and that happens in May? You know what I mean? Like you lose crops. They don't necessarily produce the same. Like the patterns change. Back when I did a lot of climate change presentations in 2007, I talked a lot to farmers, and they were talking about how they're shifting their crops to growing them at different times of the year because of both the moisture changing, because the rain patterns were shifting, and the temperatures were shifting. So we're starting to grow millet in the fall, and that wasn't what they did before. And so, we have a lot of these kinds of changes that are happening. This one is about Owen Sound and how much less frost there's going to be. Well, some people think that this is a good thing. I don't. I'm the type of person that pays attention to all of the poor little creatures out there that are, we found frogs in January. Like, nobody should see frogs in January. We have these weird stuff going on that we shouldn't be happening, and it's not all of our little friendly little critters around us. It's not their fault that this is happening, and we really should take responsibility and do something about it. There we go. All right, hopefully. Nope, I went back. That one. Nope, I'm going back. Let's try a different direction. This clicker is like exciting. Tim, can you help me out? Put me forward. One more. Okay, and here we come to, thank you. And this is the heavy precipitation days. So are you familiar with the term rain bombs? So there's basically these a lot of clouds in the air. When it gets warm, they can hold more moisture. And then what ends up happening is, like, when I was young, we used to get rains where it was all drizzly, you get these days and days of drizzly kind of weather, and we hardly get that anymore because it's so warm that a whole bunch of moisture is up there, but clouds are a little bit like bathtubs. And so you let the plug out and then it goes zoop. So have you ever seen those rain bombs now where you can see it kind of coming down almost like a funnel, like it almost looks like a tornado, but it's actually just rain? It didn't used to happen that way, right? So we're going to be getting these rain bombs, and you'll get a whole bunch of rain in one area, like big downpours, and then right next to it there'll be droughts. And like, I have a friend that's a tree grower at over near Sauble Beach, and like a couple of years ago he lost 50,000 trees in 1 year just because that one field, the rain bombs kept missing it, so it wouldn't hit that field. Just the whole year, it wouldn't hit that field. And can you imagine, like 50,000 trees just gone in 1 year, and there's nothing he could do about it. So these types of things make a big difference to us in our areas. Oh, I started going the wrong way again, Tim. And yeah, maybe you can go to the next one. I'm gonna have to start playing with it. Oh, it worked that time. Hey, that's exciting. Oh, I think I've got the system too. So, and you see that the temperature is going up on average. Like, these aren't minor things. Like, these are actually big things that we need to be paying attention to and understanding. Conservation Ontario did a report to show the different types of things that are really going to be affected with climate change. They know what's going on. They can tell us a lot about what's going to happen with floodplains and other things. And I don't need to explain these things. They're, I mean, I could talk about them for a long time, but I won't. There are reports around what's going to happen to agriculture. So there's a lot more risk. And the things are going to be worse. And they've actually done the models and trying to figure these things out. They know that it's going to rain harder. We're going to have more flooding, more drought, and more extreme heat. Surprise, surprise. If you understand climate change systems, this is what they've been predicting for a long time. But they're showing it in their modeling now, and they're being able to localize the report so people can understand it. So the biggest things around here are going to be flooding. So just keep that in mind, any of you involved in politics, because the flooding and also frazzle ice is going to be a big issue. Freeze-thaw events are going to really ruckus your infrastructure a whole bunch, and it'll cause a lot of different problems. So that's the thing that I was talking about, people just kind of like you, like being really ahead of your time and talking about these things. I was talking about these things at my municipal council, and it was like, and now they're doing all the planning and they have these things, and it's like, yay, but it's coming around. People are starting to understand, right? And we need to just encourage people to keep doing more and working on it. But we're having more flooding and drier conditions, not good things. Do you know what happens when you have a dry field and then it rains really hard on it? It runs off. It doesn't stay on it. It's like a hard pan, and then it just goes zoop. It doesn't really help your crops. And it can, if the water stays there, it can drown them, basically, right? So you have these different systems happening, and all your plants are really messed up too. It's just like all the animals and the squirrels I saw a skunk last week. I was just like, what? I shouldn't be seeing a skunk out and about, but I did. So, and let's see, this one's, am I going the right way? It's a blue one, yes. So there's also a report on how things are going to shift, up into the next phase. So it's more than a little scary, I'm not going to go into the details of these, but there are more and more reports out there that are showing exactly what is going to be happening in our areas, and they have a pretty good idea. And we need to start really paying attention to these things and making our plans different. So field crops, livestock, and fruit and vegetables are going to be the ones that are really affected around here. Again, surprise, surprise. It is what's around here. It's also, these are the basic things that we need. So we're getting a bit into the point of getting into trouble as humanity, right? And it's funny for me sometimes because I've been talking about global warming and climate change since the 80s. I would guess probably some of you have too. There's some of you that are my age or older in here. But, you know, these conversations are the same conversations I had in the 80s with people. Like, I was giving climate change presentations back then. We didn't call it climate change, it was global warming. But, you know, like, it's still the same thing. There's still the same predictions. It's just they have more science to back up what's going to happen, and people know in detail more what's going to happen in local areas. So we need to really listen and share these things with people. I know an Algonquin elder, Larry McDermott, and his biggest worry is around, you know, internationally it's called desertification, but it's really the loss of soil. And we are losing soil as humanity around the world at such a big rate that it's a worry whether we're going to be able to grow enough food for ourselves in the future. So some people talk about climate change, and we were talking about this earlier, that, you know, people talk a little bit about, oh, well, this crop is going to have higher yields, and you might have a longer growing season. And yes, at a certain point, crops get to a certain temperature, and then they just die. I met a Saskatchewan farmer one time. I was going to the Globe conference in Vancouver. It's a sustainable business conference. And he told me that he plants his crops thousands and thousands of acres every year, and then he collects the insurance when they die. I was baffled, right? That didn't make any sense to me, but he was like, well, I make enough money off of that. But that's why I have to keep buying more fields or renting more fields to be able to do, because then I get the insurance money when it dies. And I was just like, I can't imagine that a farmer's livelihood has come to that point. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would be heart-wrenching. I can't imagine it. So, like, all the work you put into it with, you know, over so many years and generations. And anyway, it's a really serious thing. So, on to another serious topic. Although my friend Natasha does a lot better with making a lot of jokes and making it fun than I do. Although I do make her laugh when she's presenting, so if she starts laughing in the middle, you can blame it all on me, okay? But we've got Natasha up next, and she's going to be talking about how climate change is affecting the lakes and fishing and the families at Neshingaming and around the area. So welcome, Natasha. Right and left ones work.
The right and left.
Yes.
Fair enough. I don't know my directions, so bear. So let's talk about fish. This is my story. This is my experience. And I'm going to not try to bore you. I will try to make it a little bit more lively because not many people know about fish. So this is me. I come from way up north. My community is literally the end of the highway. It's fly-in or ice roads past my community. If you continue on the highway, you will end up in Lac Seul. So I'm married to my husband, who's a sustainable fisher from Neshingaming, and we, the family, ran a fishing business for 15 years. We smoked it, and trust me, smoking takes a little bit of art. It's really hard to roll it up and keep it lit. We also sold it at farmers markets in Owen Sound, Lions Head, and in Toronto. We used to drive through Markdale all the time. We used to sell fish at the market shop, and Ron Gillespie used to run it. We're sustainable fishers, and what that means is my husband used to lift and set nets by hand. My husband's hands would dwarf most men's hands here, and I'm not exaggerating. This is fish. When I was introduced to fish, I only knew goldfish. I was raised a vegetarian. I was raised for a vegetarian since I was 4 years old. So I didn't think anything got bigger than a goldfish. And I can remember actually winning a goldfish at a fair once. Upon a time, you know, you throw the little ping pong ball and it falls into a little thing and you get a goldfish and you go home with it. I was sent back with that goldfish and, you know, I had to return the goldfish and, well, I got nothing. But I got a story. And that's the biggest fish I thought I had ever seen and I would ever catch. Well, these are a little bit bigger than goldfish. My husband introduced me to fish. The first fish I ever caught was a lake trout. And it actually bit me between my thumb and my next finger, and right where the nice soft spot on your fingers are, and took the nice rubber glove off, which was lovely, and I did not like lake trout after that. So we knew where the whitefish were. My husband did anyway. I did not. I knew they were in the water, but that's about as much as I knew. There was not a lot of algae at that time, and this was in the early 2000s. We used to spend he used to spend 5 days on the water, 2 days on shore. Trust me, you don't want a fisherman on shore for any length of time. He is not a happy man. We had good ice. I don't know how often you guys see the shoreline of Lake Huron or Georgian Bay, but we used to have really good solid ice. My boys can tell you about skating on it, going down and checking it, listening to it groan and crack and crackle and make all these wonderful sounds. It doesn't happen anymore. We used to catch more whitefish than any other species. Now that's the trick question, is how many species can you actually name? I can name a lot, but we'll quiz you later. And the lack of ice coverage was becoming obvious, as you most likely know, even with looking at the Saugeen River. Later, see that big, nice, beautiful red banner at the top of that Georgian Bay? It says strong wind warning in effect. It's becoming strong wind warning. It also says gale warning, and I've also seen storm warnings out. Those are all very interesting weather statements. It means you're not going fishing. So whitefish were about equal with like other fish, like lake trout, salmon, and rainbow. They were starting to become equal, which was a little concerning. Lake trout were noticeably small. I will tell you a little bit more about that later on too. Days were beginning to become harder to get out on the water. Why? Because the wind. You don't go out fishing when it's windy out. The nets get pulled through your fingers. My husband's hands used to come back looking like hamburger. It's really hard to function when your hands are just shredded because of the nets and the ropes. And he used to fish by himself, so if he made one mistake, he might not be coming home to me that night. So we were 3 to 4 days on the water, maybe, and bycatch like suckers and lingcod were dropping. And there are fish out there called suckers. They're not suckers, like literally, and lingcod are really famous for peeing on you if you ever got to play with one. I love saying that, sorry. The last few years of us fishing, this is what I do daily. This is my fixation, is recording the weather. I still go and check the forecast of Wyerton, Port Elgin, Tobermory, North Georgian Bay, South Georgian Bay, North Lake Huron, South Lake Huron, because this is what I used to do every single day while we fished. Now I'm just recording it. So all the red stuff on one side says you're not going fishing. I need 2 days. My husband needed 2 days to go fishing. So what does that mean? I look at that and I see twice. I think we could make, in 31 days, we made it out fishing twice. I needed 1 day to set, I need 1 day to lift. So that means October 1st, I set a net. My husband would set a net. October 2nd, he would go lift it. He would have to pull the nets back out of the water. October 11th, he would be able to set a net. October 12th, he would go lift that net. And then that would be it. That would be the only income we could make in a month. And that's really difficult to live on. I don't know about you, but when your whole livelihood, raising your family, I have 3 sons, raising your entire family on this, it's really, really difficult when you have no idea how many fish you're going to lift in that very short amount of time. So lake whitefish were getting harder to find. We would catch maybe 40 fish, 35 whitefish, 5 lake trout. It was becoming 2 whitefish and 32 lake trout. And again, I don't like lake trout, not just because they bite. And there was 6 salmon and other things like pickerel. We were lucky to get on the water 4 times, maybe 8 days out of an entire month. August 2008, we walked away from our business, realizing that the lake whitefish were in trouble. Like, we knew this, but it was the acceptance part that we had a really difficult time with. Because we knew when we walked away that we were walking away from our community, our friends, vendors that my kids have grown up with. 15 years is a long time. When my boys were in 2008, they would have been roughly about, I don't know, about 22-ish. So from the time 7, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up until up in the 20s, they were all of a sudden taken away from everything that they knew from growing up, from working with the fish, selling the fish, going down to Toronto, doing all that stuff, and all of a sudden stopping all the people that they grew up with. So this is what we did form the Boggador Alliance in 2018, which was the saving thing that saved my sanity. So I wasn't going to go into the history of the Great Lakes, but I guess we're going to. The lake trout populations, okay. So the last glaciation ended 10,000 years ago, which was a little while ago. The lake trout populations crashed in the 1950s due to overfishing and the invasion of the sea lampreys. Sea lampreys are the ugliest fish ever known on this planet, or to me anyway. I can tell you right now, Prince Charles loves them, so if we catch enough of them and smoke them, we can send it off to him. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Sea lampreys invade Great Lakes in the 1930s and expanded the range and numbers on preying on fish. And I can tell you the damage they do to the fish is atrocious. Following the lake trout collapse, the alewives fish exploded in the 1960s. The alewives were actually introduced to feed the salmon that were also stocked. So the Pacific salmon, through the stocking programs, was introduced through Michigan and Wisconsin. Coho salmon, beautiful fish, really, for where they are, for what they are beautiful, but they don't belong here. Were also stocked in 67 and 68 in Chinook salmon. Coho and Chinook salmon started spawning naturally. And then they collapsed in the 1980s. The overpopulation of the salmon coincided with the invasion of the mussels. I can tell you right now, the mussels are atrocious. What they do to a fisherman's hands is atrocious. They get into the hands into the boots, because it falls off the nets and lands into the boots, and then I'm there for hours picking them out of the fingertips, out of the bottom of his feet, the top of his feet, trying to get them out. We won't even talk about what they do to a fish and the insides of a fish and how they leave the fish. Salmon populations crashed in the 1980s and in the early 2000s due to the lack of food. Wow, it's amazing. If you put a bunch of fish into the water and there's no food for them, I guess they're going to disappear. So they decided the mussels to continue to expand due to the lack of things that wanted to eat them. Well, because they're crappy. And the mussels feed on plankton, which also all the little tiny baby fish need. And so they were out competing, the baby fish. The invasion of the round goby is another one that's been a new predator. And they all come, well, not all of them, but they came from the Caspian and Black Sea. And the lake trout are beginning to feed on the round goby. And we're not too sure if they're going to rebound. Okay, back to climate change again. So these are the things that we used to see. Lake Huron water temperature is going up. This is all the timelines, and the graphs were collected and analyzed by Dr. John Anderson, my science guy. He's also part of the team up in Owen Sound for the climate action team. And he also used to be on the board of Boggador. So the frequency of windy days, I've already shown that, but it proves it on his charts. What I saw and what he saw in the data, they're saying exactly the same thing. And the wind speeds are increasing. And again, we saw that firsthand. We told him this without looking at his graphs, that this is what was happening, and he verified it with his graphs. But on to a happier note, this is Boggador Alliance. We're led and managed environmental, indigenous, of course it's indigenous, led and managed environmental group. We're formed to bring attention to the decline of lake whitefish and climate change. This is a short list of what we have done. We do bird, animal, bat, flora, fauna, amphibian surveys, habitat restoration, species at risk, transfer of knowledge through storytelling, communications in film, photography, and social media. And we have a newsletter called The Bubbler, and there's so much more. I mean, like every single day we're out hiking and exploring and doing something crazy and new, like coming here and camping out at Elephant Thoughts and speaking here. We are working on presently hiking the Bruce Trail at the beginning of the Saugeen Territory. So that's starting at the Hockley Valley just north of Orangeville. And this was my youngest son's dream, was to hike the entire Bruce Trail. We're not doing the entire thing, but I thought 600 kilometers was a good chunk of it. We do also storytelling with an elder or knowledge holder every Sunday from 6 to 7. We do it online, so it's open to all of you if you want to join us. We're learning right now our T6. We do 9 shoreline cleanups, or where we always do shoreline cleanups. It's one of my favorite things to do, walking along the beach, picking up litter, but also get to talk to a lot of interesting people. We're doing dog sledding right now every Monday with the youth, and I think the youth are loving it so far, I think. I haven't been able to join them. Normally I got to, but this year I've been doing a lot of administration work. We're doing winter camping on Manitoulin next week, Wednesday to Friday. We get to camp out in, and it's kind of amusing, a teepee. Sorry, I find that a little bit odd. But anyway, we're doing that next week for a little bit of, fun. And this is more fun again. So we're going to do a little bit of trivia, and this is what I mean. I'm going to quiz you on a few things and just see if you guys can play along. How do you say whitefish in Anishinaabemowin? Anybody? Come on, youth. Somebody should be able to say something here. Thank you. A tigomeg, right? True or false? Cold water in the Great Lakes has less oxygen than warm water. Youth, don't say anything. Anybody? Wow, you guys are crickets. False. Cold water has more oxygen. True or false? Lake whitefish spawn along sandy shorelines. Louder. Nice. False? Let's see. False. Lake whitefish spawn on rocky shoals. Wow, that's small. Okay, does anybody can read that? I can't.
Yellow perch, rainbow smelt, lake whitefish, freshwater drum. Which of them are invasive to Georgian Bay?
And I really don't want any of you getting mad at me for this one.
You want me to repeat the fish?
Yellow perch, rainbow smelt, lake whitefish, freshwater drum. Which of these fish are invasive to Georgian Bay? All of them? All? Anyone else? Come on, be a sport.
They're expecting you to be a trickster.
I didn't give you the option of all of the above, so you're going to have to pick one. Pick. Yeah. I like the option, what would that be, E? But no, there's no E there. You got A, B, or C, or D. Yellow perch, rainbow smelt, lake whitefish, freshwater drum. One you should be able to eliminate right off the top, because I've been talking about it a lot.
Rainbow smelt.
Perfect. Rainbow smelt is invasive to Georgian Bay. And why were they introduced? Just for fun. Giggles. For food. For other things.
So is there any other type of smell?
No? No, so
Or just smell?
yeah, it's all rainbow smelt and they're all invasive, so please eat them all and get rid of them. And the same thing with the salmon. Yeah.
Buckets home.
Please continue bringing buckets home. And if you can't eat them all, just give them away to your friends and enjoy. Same thing, please do that with the rainbow trout, and please do that with the Chinook salmon. Any of those, please. eat. And brown trout, please, catch them by the bucket loads, eat them, enjoy them, get them out of the water, please. Do me a favor. This is how you find us. Well, find me anyway. The rest of them are going to be hiding now. So anyway, yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun talking to you guys. Thanks for having me. I am now handing it over to my oldest son, Christopher Akwenzi. He is the youth lead, and he is the one that gets to tell you about how he herds cats every day.
Yeah, we'll have fun with it. Oh, maybe I might be doing Owen's presentation for him. Nope. No, it's joking. So, hello, good evening everyone, good morning, if you're gonna watch it in the morning or afternoon. But yeah, I'm Christopher Akwenzi. I'm the lead youth for our program Acre Guardians, which is a program that we created, 2.5 years ago now. First started with me and Mingan. And then, yeah, later on, well, back in early summer, we brought on more youth, and then in the fall, we had a few more join along too. But right now, the Acre Guardians are working hard. Right now, we're kind of stuck in the office right now. We don't want to trudge for the snow too much or, yeah, get cold. Our youth are a little fragile at times, so we gotta be careful with them. But they're slowly getting there. They're getting more adapted to being outdoors in the winter. But yeah, they just finished up doing the ArcGIS program with a few of our colleagues. And what else have we finished up just recently? They did some video editing as well. They did a workshop on that about 2-3 months ago. And we just started doing our surveys again. Yesterday was our first survey, our land survey. We went around and identified some trees, some shrubs too, and well, the forbs, they're still under about 6 inches of snow for now, but we'll get there. And yeah, I think it was the first time that some of them saw fisher tracks. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a fisher out in the wild or maybe cross the road. But it was something interesting to see. We were wondering why this animal was doing these big 12-foot hops and stuff, and slowly realized, you know what, he was climbing the tree and going across and coming back down. But yeah, that was yesterday's little ordeal. So yeah, that's our little thing right now with the Acre Guardians. We're going to get out more. They're going to be trying to get their orca training here pretty soon. Some of them who missed out in the fall last year to do it will hopefully be getting some of that. And they're also getting trained on becoming guides, being able to take people out on hikes, guiding them around, school groups, mostly for right now, but also private tours as well. So as of right now, they are less than a month away of graduating a 1-year college certificate that they just got through Fanshawe. It will be Ecotourism Essentials. And with that, they gotta learn flora and fauna, wildlife of North America, and then they gotta learn how to use some social media, some safety, a safety course, and now the newest course we're going to be doing is interpretation. So developing those stories they can tell people out on the trails, out hiking. So they're going to be busy working on that this coming month. And yeah, some of these photos here real quick, just to kind of go over a little bit more. The one in the very middle is Cherish. She couldn't make it here tonight. It was her mom's birthday, so she went out to go celebrate her mom's birthday with her. But she's pulling out phragmites from the backyard that we had a little problem with, and too bad the picture wasn't just a little bit bigger, but there was a pond restoration just a little bit more that the youth also helped out with and helped bringing back more newts, more turtles as well. We had a snapping turtle in that little pond before, so they're working on some restoration projects as we go along. The top photo is us doing a land survey up on the escarpment. Down here on this very bottom is when we took a little, I think that was an overnight stay down in Kimberley, where we got to meet some people from the Beaver Valley and talk to them about some of the work that we have done. And we have our microinvertebrates that we've done, and I don't recognize this photo. Where was this one? That one looks like a hike that we did. I'm pretty sure. The top one there.
The top's where we saw the green snake when we went by.
Yeah. So, anyways, a lot of different activities we have done. The youth have been really engaged doing outdoor stuff. I don't want to take too much away from them because they're going to be doing a little presentation for you guys. It's part of their Fanshawe course, so don't be too hard on them. They had a choice. They had a choice to create a video or come here and talk to all of you tonight. So we got Owen that will do his little talk, and it's going to be surrounded around water and fish. And we got Ethan, who's going to do a little bit, well, again with the water, but it going through all the different little ecosystems that we have on Neoshinaming. Yeah, so land surveys are one of our biggest things we're doing. The Bruce Trail, again, is another thing. And I can't remember what else. Manitoulin we have, and then, yeah. I don't know. Our schedule is so busy right now. It's like all of April is booked already. So, but yeah, that's just their little bit right now. I know I didn't really talk about climate change too much. I was just kind of bragging about the youth, but it's really important to get the youth engaged, get them out there, get them learning about climate change, being out in nature and enjoying it. That's one thing that I always looked forward to, was being able to have youth and showing them the outdoors and teaching them about all this different stuff that I've learned over the years as well. And enjoying it, being able to go to Algonquin like we did in the fall, do that paddle, see all these different things that they might not have seen when a year or two ago, where, yeah, some of them were still in school or some of them were still trying to figure out where they were trying to go. So, yeah, I know it ain't really the thing, but yeah, I just want to brag about these guys because, yeah, they've been working hard. They've been doing a lot of good work, and feel free to ask them lots of questions. They'll answer all your questions for you. If not, they'll come to me to have them help them. But yeah, I think they're getting a little antsy right now. So I think it's better to hurry up and get it going for you guys right now before you get too anxious. I'm really looking at Owen right now, so. Yeah, it will be very interesting for you. Last time you got to do it in front of a whole bunch of youth, and now you get to do it to the general public now. Big step up. But yeah, that's just a little bit of our program. If you have any more questions, feel free to come ask me. I've done documentaries. There's a documentary that we done, when was that now? We did the big canoe paddle in 2002. And then we did the documentary in the springtime. We did a few showings of it. We did a showing in Meaford, one at the Harmony Center, and I think we have a few more coming up as well. That's ceremonial canoe paddle. Again, that's acknowledging the spirits, the water, the land, and trying to help encourage things to come back, like the lake whitefish, the spirit of the fish, and having them come back. We have an elder that we take out. He does all the prayers and all that stuff for us, and yeah, he gets a nice free boat ride as we take him along. Yeah, and then there's lots of things to talk about, but I know we got some time here, and I know the boys are getting anxious to do their presentation, so we better get them going here before it gets too much. Oh.
Okay, I guess
Well, it's even first. Hey, there you go. So, good luck.
Same here. Alrighty, everybody. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here. My name is Ethan Young. I'm actually from Meaford, so I'm closer than everybody else here to you. But I've been working with Boggadawad since around early June, and I've been having an amazing time because it's honestly something that I never thought I would get to have an opportunity doing as a job or learning about for a career. You know, going outside, learning about identification, conservation, photography, learning how to lead tours. Not something I saw in my life, but happy that it is becoming part of it. Anyway, today I'm going to be doing a presentation on biodiversity. For any that don't know, a really simple explanation of what biodiversity is how plants or animals interact with each other in an area. So like a bear eating salmon. Good example. Oh, the controller. So I'm going to be talking about 3 different ecosystems. The escarpment, so the bluffs that we see all around. The alvar, which is a really unique special ecosystem. And then the shoreline. So as Chris said, I'm going to be talking about how the water kind of goes through these 3 different ecosystems and a bit about the animals that are in them. So first with the escarpment, rainwater will hit the escarpment, obviously hitting the top of it. And the rainwater collects throughout the spring with the meltwater to become vernal pools. And vernal pools are temporary collections of water that you can find in forests that will dry out as the year progresses. So, you know, in the spring, there will be a nice pool. Late summer, it'll be a hollow in the ground. These vernal pools, they provide a really crucial breeding habitat to a bunch of different amphibians. In this picture, it's newts and salamanders, because what they'll do is they'll travel from one pool to the other over the year and also lay eggs in them at the beginning of the year. It just creates a huge place to actually, you know, live for any frogs that are on escarpments, any amphibians in general. And also provides water to all the animals that are already living up there that don't have a source of water. You don't know, because it's a giant cliff. And eventually, as the rainwater slowly makes its way through the escarpment, going down it, becoming groundwater, it's filtered through the limestone, and it absorbs different nutrients and minerals. Oh, perfect. Okay, then the groundwater flows into the alvar. The alvar is personally one of my favorite ecosystems in Canada because it changes throughout the year. It's not one ecosystem ever. So in the beginning of the year, the spring, as the meltwater from the snow is coming in and as rains are coming in, the alvar fills with water. Like spring, fall, the water can be up to your knees in some spots. Just a total wetland swamp, basically. But then, as the summer progresses, it slowly becomes a dry land. Like, you're walking around hearing the soil crack under your feet. It's incredible. And it hosts a lot of different unique plants and wildlife that can only really survive in those areas. And a really great example of one is the shrike, loggerhead shrikes specifically, as they are endangered and rely on these habitats. Because these habitats have big open fields where they can see different, not lizards here, different mice and rodents, salamanders, because what they do is they use hawthorns or other thorn trees or bushes, mainly shrubs, and they'll find little rodents, little animals, bugs, stick them on the thorns and then eat them later. So it's a pretty gruesome one, but it is one of the cooler animals that is unfortunately endangered there. But the alvar has a lot of different animals that use it, go through it, and live in it. Another example is merlins. I think one of the smallest hawk or falcon breeds that we have here in Canada can be frequently seen in alvars, especially, well, from what I've seen around us. We've frequently seen merlins there, hovering in the air, looking for different rodents to just dive down and hunt. Bears and deer also use it as a corridor because it's way easier to walk through a big open field than a densely packed forest. And yeah, it's just an amazing environment that I really love, and water flows into the Alvar, turning it into a wetland. It also flows out of it because alvars are typically on canted surfaces, so just a low angle that will usually lead down towards the water or the main water source. And the reason that alvars actually are able to trap so much water is because the ground is mainly made up of peat moss and other small organics. So it's a big sponge, basically. Oh, and the groundwater gives the alvar a lot of those nutrients that it picked up in the escarpment. So you can see, as you see in the picture, a lot of carnivorous trees and a lot of hardwoods that are supported by those minerals. Not many trees in the alvar though, because, you know, a lot of peat moss and organics and not much soil. And it's really dry. Okay, and finally, the shoreline. Now, so the groundwater will go through into the shoreline in one last big filter through the rocks and the dirt and the sand, eventually reaching our main water basin to restart the cycle when it evaporates and goes into the clouds again. But the shoreline is also, and many might not realize that, arguably one of our most important ecosystems here. Because essentially, it's a huge nursery for insects. And for one, I personally hate insects, especially mosquitoes and flies, because they're just really annoying. But to almost every small species of animal, they are incredibly important. All bats, a lot of birds, a lot of small rodents and mammals even eat these insects and rely on them. So, you know, anything that does affect our shoreline would affect this nursery, and then in turn affecting dozens of different animal species and ecosystems. They also provide a great habitat and a bunch of different food sources for a huge variety of aquatic animals and birds, such as horned grebes, which we have seen over at Cape Croker, not personally, but we know that they are there and they're rare waterfowl. But a good example of some aquatic animals would be like otters, for example. Anyway, any questions about it? Because this is the end of my presentation.
Questions at the end?
We'll take questions at the end.
Yeah, sorry, we'll take questions at the end, I guess.
The otters,
Yeah.
have they always been there?
I'm pretty sure that we have had otters in Canada. They are a natural species.
Freshwater,
Yeah.
I see the ones on the west coast.
Oh yeah, sea otters and stuff, yeah. Yeah, I believe we have always had freshwater otters, but then there are naturally a lot of different species, and I do believe that we have some invasive.
I didn't know until a few years ago, and suddenly I saw something up on Florida Island.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah, very cool. Right. Well, thank you, everybody. Okay, sorry.
I'm just wondering about this shoreline effect with this project that's being debated with the tank range in Meeker.
Sorry, the what?
The shoreline that you say, like,
Yeah,
it's so
it is very,
important.
yeah.
So, like, with this new pumping station or whatever it is that's being proposed.
Oh, yes.
Like, how many acres or whatever feet of shoreline is that going to affect?
The pump station.
It's not even here yet.
I know, it's,
That's the problem.
the pump station is such, I've heard a lot of things about it. Not a ton with Bogdawad, but at home, especially, like, it's really hard to say how much it could affect because it's not just the shoreline, because the pump station goes all the way into the water. So it's basically that whole area of water. Any animal species, any fish, they could all be affected by it. Yeah.
I also heard that they're filtering the water as they release it, which could create a dead zone and lack of nutrients in the water and food for the fish. They're filtering the water before they pump it out from the tank range. So if they were
It's,
Well, if you're filtering the water, the process would filter out the nutrients and stuff that the animals rely on for that habitat. The habitat
I
would be
they can
negatively
say that,
impacted.
but will it really happen?
Yes, it will.
it's, yeah, it's really,
I know it's a big debate.
yeah, it's really hard to say what will happen, but you can make a lot of assumptions based off of what has happened in the past with projects like it. Like, undoubtedly, it's going to affect water species.
Disturbing something that's natural is not good.
Yeah. Like, a good way to think of it is there is a system to everything, even if it is extremely chaotic. And nature is all chaotic, but everything has a system, and everything works together in a way.
In school, they call it dynamic equilibrium.
I don't think I've heard that term forever. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening. Oh, sorry, yes.
So I think you did a fantastic job.
Thank you very much.
You have a lot of enthusiasm. It sounds like you got a lot of knowledge. So I'm really interested in, your kind of enthusiasm about this. So
Yeah.
where do you want to go with this? Like, what do you think you want to do with this information?
I'm not really sure yet, personally, because my personal goal right now is kind of to see as much as I can, because as unfortunate as it is, I don't think that everything will be here in 20 years, example. And I want to know what everything looked like before it was gone so that I can tell people that we should be keeping what we have left. So basically, I want to see everything that I can so that I can help protect what we have in the future.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other questions?
It was a great presentation.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, everybody.
Tim, did you see Owen's slides in there?
Might be back before,
Because we skipped over Owen's slides somehow in the presentation. I'm just not sure where they went.
I mean, I don't really need pictures, I can talk.
Okay, well, just a minute. I'll just take 1 second to see if we can find them. So I think we're getting into my stuff. Sorry, I'm just going through them just to see if I can find them. Because they were supposed to be right in here, right after this. I'll skip to the back and see if they've shifted in the, nope. So Owen, you get to be on the spot, sadly. And his slides have disappeared from the show, so Owen is amazing. So he's gonna do a fabulous job for you anyway.
Some of the resources I was using were in the patches to begin with, so I might go back on our slides.
Okay, here.
Well, it was mainly the graphs talking about the temperature to
Okay.
provide context for what I was talking,
There we go.
yeah. These
Here's
graphs,
Owen.
yes.
All right. So I want to be talking about climate change, in particular climate change and how it's affecting Lake Huron, because for me that's something that's close to home. And whenever I was in high school, it seemed like we would always discuss we'd always look towards the entire world. And although this perspective is very important to me, and it's important when we're talking about climate change, I think that when we look at the entire world when discussing climate change, it's very easy for us to shift blame onto other nations instead of focusing on what we can be doing as a nation. And as a result, I think our land is suffering. So climate change is having a devastating effect in Canada. We see it's confusing and stressing out our local wildlife and ecosystems. Something that worries me particularly is that many people argue that climate change might benefit tourism and our economy. So to me, this is an extremely optimistic view and not entirely realistic, because many people come here for our wildlife and biodiversity. A lot of people come to this area for the nature, the animals, and things like that. So with our changing climate, life is out of balance. Things are changing faster than our local wildlife can tolerate, and each season these symptoms worsen. Earlier today we were talking about how Bagedawad saw a frog in the middle of January under the ice. That's not normal. Frogs brumate under the ground, and in particular this is a leopard frog, and they go underneath the ground past the frost line so they don't freeze solid, because if they freeze solid, their veins can rupture from freezing because water expands 9% when it freezes and can kill them. So seeing these animals, these organisms present in January is extremely alarming, it's extremely worrying, and it's extremely unnatural. Another thing that worries me about this perspective that climate change can benefit our economy and benefit tourism in this area is that it encourages us to take no action. And this perspective is just a hopeful future that is in no way guaranteed. And I think that if we, all around me at work we see these symptoms for climate change. So one species that I wanted to talk about in particular is lake whitefish, because they are very sensitive to the temperature, and many factors of their eggs are laid and when the eggs hatch for lake whitefish, which means that if the average temperature of the Lake Huron is a little bit warmer than it normally is, it means the eggs of the lake whitefish are laid later in the season and they hatch earlier in the season, which means there is less time for that fish species to develop as an embryo inside the egg. These fish literally have less time to develop in their first stage of life. Additionally, whitefish lay their eggs on shoals, which Natasha shared earlier. These shoals require adequate ice cover to protect the eggs from high wind speeds and wave action. Ice cover in Lake Huron has decreased 50% since 1970. What does this mean for lake whitefish? It means they no longer have the ice cover they rely on to protect their eggs. The result of this stress on the Lake Huron whitefish population has caused a decrease in recruitment of young fish in their population. What this means is that when we look at the Lake Huron whitefish, there is a small number of young fish, and the fish that are being found in the waters are mainly adult fish. The younger fish are not succeeding in their life. Once these eggs hatch, they rely on plankton blooms to provide an adequate food source for the larval fish. But, as discussed earlier, changes in the average temperature of Lake Huron changes when the lake whitefish hatch, which has created a mismatch between the plankton blooms and when the eggs hatch, which means when these eggs hatch, they're not lined up with the plankton blooms, which means when the eggs hatch, there's no food for them. They're starving the moment they leave their eggs. And the reason why I want to bring awareness to this is that they're starting to say that whitefish might not be present in Lake Huron in the next 5 years. We might lose that fish in Lake Huron, as well as Georgian Bay. With these intense changes to our wildlife, will this actually benefit our economy? People rely on the whitefish for a living. My boss relied on whitefish for a living at one point in her life. Her family had to stop fishing because of the decline in lake whitefish populations. There are historical letters from Captain John McGregor to Queen Victoria talking about how the populations of our native fish species were so abundant that the people of Canada would never starve. Now we are watching these native species disappear. So when you hear that perspective, that climate change might benefit this economy, that it might benefit our tourism industry, this perspective ignores one of the main things that makes the tourism industry what it is, our wildlife and ecosystems. Because without the biodiversity we have now, how can we live in good faith that we will benefit from climate change? Lake whitefish is only one example of a species that may become extirpated in the Great Lakes. We've already lost species like the blue pike, gravel chub, and paddlefish. Are we okay with losing more? I'm tired and frustrated of hearing this perspective being shared, and I urge you all to question this perspective when you hear it being shared in our public circles. This perspective only encourages inaction when we desperately require direct action to keep our Great Lakes healthy. And that's all. I forgot. Is there any questions? Okay. Hello. Sorry.
With all of the nuclear experiments around the world and the amount of warmer water being underwater explosions, our own Bruce Power, how many gallons of warmer water are being pumped into Lake Huron every day?
I don't know the exact.
Like, I think we are creating, not you and I, but these people that make money by doing what they're doing is destroying our climate.
Entirely. I've also heard stories about the Bruce Power with the outtake pipes, is that it creates this area of warm water that the fish like, and warm water and cold water don't mix. Oftentimes it creates stratification or layers, and what happens is when these fish tolerate these warm waters, they get used to these temperatures, and when they reach this wall of cold water, it can shock them. And there's a species particularly called gizzard shad, which is, this is quite often around Bruce Power. You will see die-offs of hundreds of gizzard shad in the winter because they will be in a warm patch of water and they will hit that cold patch and their body will go into shock. They won't swim and they'll just sink and die. So there are impacts like that from.
So in effect, we all have to adapt to what's happening.
Yeah, our water is changing. The temperature is increasing. Our annual wind speeds are increasing. Our ice cover is decreasing. It's decreased 50% since the 1970s. The temperature has increased at least 2 degrees since when my mother.
But we don't even know how many nuclear explosions from India and Korea are underwater.
Mm-hmm.
We hear about it like 10 years later that's been happening. So again, it's the greed of man that is creating our problem, not you and I.
Okay.
All right.
That was wonderful. You made me cry. It's hard to make me cry, but you made me cry. But so did Ethan, actually. Aren't they wonderful? Yes. I mean, I can't imagine a better crew of people to work with and to have here. So thank you all again. Chi Miigwech. I'm not going to talk a lot more because I think they kind of looked after it and gave us some really important ideas. I'm not good at running these things. There's a lot of information out there around solutions and things that we can do. There's a lot of people doing good work. So I just kind of wanted to remind people that, you know, like Grey County, it does have the climate change action plan that you could look at and see what all the good work that's been done and see ways that you can do things. There are climate calculators to figure out the kind of footprint that you have in your own life. And these have been around for a long time, but they're getting better and better at helping to figure out what our habits are and how we can help to be able to reduce our emissions. We were talking at dinner and throughout the evening, there's always things we can do. Like, there are effects from corporations and governments and other people, but we have to have the integrity and the moral authority to talk about these things and doing those in your personal lives, like we were talking all about the recycling and reusing containers and going and refilling soap, and like all of those things are inspiring for people, and they're positive, and we need to work together and do these good things so that we can then all be able to have a brighter future together. So, it helps with those things. If anybody is interested in being able to be a climate reality leadership core presenter, there's trainings that happen over the years in different locations where you can go for 3 days in person to be able to go to a training. Sometimes they have them online as well. I'm on the board, so I can usually get people into trainings. You kind of confidentially have to come to me and talk about that. But there's one coming up soon in New York City. There's going to be one later this year in the fall in Detroit, which is a lot closer. And I'm hoping that some of our crew want to come down with me and we can attend a training, and because they do a lot of really practical things around how to be able to talk about climate change. So it's not like all science, a lot of it is actually social science and how you can explain to people and how you can be a good speaker so that people feel like they want to do something by the time at the end of the night is there and that they haven't hopefully gone to sleep in the middle of your presentation. The Canadian organization is a bit of a maverick sometimes. So the training that's in New York, Al Gore does the training, part of the training himself. But in Canada, we decided to be a bit of a maverick because it's really hard to get Al Gore to come to Canada to do a training. So we actually have some advocacy in the prairies right now, because that's an area where people don't talk about climate change enough. And so you can actually still sign up online in February 24th and 25th. There's online training that you can go and take and just watch the things that you're able to watch. And normally they're also available, if you sign up and register, then they're also available for a while later to be able to watch if you couldn't do it when it's actually live. But that training, might be interesting to some people here, and you can just sign up and you get the information to be able to do it. See if I can get this to work. Whoa. Okay. The Climate Action Network has been around for a while. They're doing a lot of really good work. There's a lot of people that are doing it, action at the municipal level. The Climate Reality Project also has a community hub program. A lot of it's for bigger cities, but they're starting to get into smaller municipalities now, where you can get support and be able to track what municipal action is happening in similar size places to you. And they have the metrics and the ways that you can compare. So if you want to be innovative in your municipality and you're doing good stuff, then they have a method of reporting all of that with all those metrics that our accountants and funders and people like to see. So there's a few things like that people can do. I found the Grey Highlands Climate Action Report is super exciting when municipalities have those. Where I live, they don't have anything like that, and they have not been doing it for a long time. It's a little frustrating sometimes I used to be involved in a different municipality, and then you move somewhere, and then it feels like you're in a dinosaur land, but it's actually the land of Wyerton Willie. There's a group that you can join on Facebook if you haven't already. I'm sure that lots of you here are already, but writing letters to local politicians. I got to tell you, I played a prank on Natasha. And when we were going to have our 5th year anniversary, I decided to send around a letter to the local politicians and people to see if we could get a certificate. Because, they do it for people's oh, it's my 80th birthday or whatever. I was like, oh, it's the 5th year anniversary. Let's see if we can get certificates from the Conservative MP and MPPs. And they both did. And they invited us in for meetings, and we got to go and have meetings, and it was delightful. Chris and Natasha both went with me, and Dylan, one of our biologists that is one of our trainers, and so we got to sit down and chat with them about fish and what's happening with climate change in the Great Lakes, and very different reactions from the two of them, but it was a really funny prank to pull on Natasha and Andrew, her husband, to have these certificates show up or to have to get photos taken with MPs or MPPs at their offices. So We'll have to see if we can do those at the 10th year anniversary. Maybe somebody can surprise us for that one. But reaching out to Alex Ruff was really, really good for us to talk to. He was very concerned. He didn't really, he hadn't heard the perspective of the fishing families about what was going on, and said he would do what he could in his own way. And later on, he came out to a cleanup with us in Harrison Park in the, I forget the name of it, the Owen Sound Waste Watchers group. Where we did a joint cleanup in Harrison Park, and he came out for a couple hours and picked up garbage. He was like trolloping up and down all those, you know, Harrison Park is really hilly. He was going down, like he was really into it. It was fabulous. So we have some interesting MPs and MPPs in this area that we can talk to and just see, because you never know what will happen if you just talk to them about it. We have lots of things under the way that we can support and try to be able to help out and support good politicians like like your deputy mayor here that care about these things, right? I remember when I was a municipal councillor, I did a lot of stuff, a lot of it sideways in my municipality, and I heard 10,000 times more complaints than I heard people being positive about what I was doing. Like, I would get phone calls that the snowplow hadn't showed up at somebody's house that morning. They had to get to work, and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that. But when I planted like 5,000 trees and parks in town, like, nobody said anything. So I was on the fundraising committee for an accessible playground, and we put a whole bunch of sensory gardens. I don't know if you've been to the Jubilee Park playground. It was like a $350,000 project. I was on the fundraising team. Not as a municipal councillor, but I was on it. And I showed up the day when they were doing all the ribbon cutting. 3 other municipal councillors got up and got their pictures taken, and nobody invited me up. So, like, sometimes you can be a politician and people just don't see you for the good work you're doing. So kudos for the good work you're doing. Stuart, good work for all the work that you did for so long. And we need to be positive with people. It really inspires action. It inspires people to be good people and to keep doing those things. And if you want to run an election again, people should support you in that. You need help. You need support. So please, keep up the communications and support for the good people, because they need it. I know from way too much experience with that. Anyway, this is my last slide. I'm really grateful for all of you for staying so late, paying such good attention. I know it's been, sometimes I talk a lot. It's a bit of a problem on occasion, but I'm also really proud of our crew. We have such wonderful young people with us, and Natasha's a fabulous friend and colleague that we get to do a lot of good work together. And I hope that this kind of inspires you here, to be able to do your own things, but also understand a little bit more what it's really like for people that are facing climate change in their daily lives, right? And we owe a duty to people that are really being affected to do something about this. So hopefully, this 1.5 degrees that we're already at, and like the ocean levels and water temperatures around the world are off the charts, and people don't know what's going to happen. Like, there's so much going on with all of these things that we don't all understand. There's no way we can, but all we can do is get up every day and be hopeful and go, you know what I mean? We need to just keep going and keep trying and being optimistic and doing our own good work. So thank you all for coming. 4 hours sleep, so I'm emotional. I think you can understand that too, right? But it's been really wonderful to be here. Thank you to the team for the pizza, for giving us such a wonderful welcome. Thanks to Tim for looking after us so kindly up there and advancing slides and making sure that we're not squealing when we shouldn't be. And I thank you for the welcome, coming here and doing your diligence and talking to us and doing your pronunciation so well. I was impressed. So thank you all to the whole team for coming. I think I'll end it here, but if anyone has any questions or wants to talk to us more, we can stay around for a bit. But I know it's getting late, so we really appreciate and value all of your time. So Chi Miigwech, thanks. Bamapi, safe travels, everybody.
is. Now, the door prizes. Here, you go ahead. That one's blank. Who put that in there?
That means I get to pick who won.
Maybe that was written in invisible ink.
There you go.
Stuart.
I guess that's you.
I like a door. Like a door?
He'd like a door. Preferably garage.
How about a book on drive? A book on what? A drive. So the motivation, how to motivate others and yourself as well. Thank you, Dean, for the selection.
There you go. Good mojo, Stuart. Good mojo.
I have a book on indigenous relations.
We got.
Dave Swiger. Congratulations.
There you go. But there's still one more. There you go.
This is my kind of prize. It's a coffee mug with some coffee. Oh, it's actually chocolate, hot chocolate.
Sometimes we get stuck together.
Elizabeth Norrington.
I recognize that name. To anybody who watches this online or at home, see if you come, you can have a prize.
We need to thank certain people. We need to thank our production person up there, Tim, all of the front of house staff, and our volunteers, and we need to thank the Highland Grounds for coffee and tea tonight.
Big cheese for the pizza.
Big cheese pizza for our guests. I think that's about it.
That's it. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming. For those who are watching at home, thank you very much for your time and attention. Have a fantastic evening. Drive safe. And let's continue to be as optimistic as we can as we try to fight the battles we need to fight.